Hi everyone, I'm here with Jason Sultan from Soul and Wolf. He's the founder and director and also the founder of the No BS conference, which is coming up in March, which I'm also really excited to be going to and emceeing. So Can't wait for that one. In this conversation, we're talking about what it takes to actually create success. And we're going to be talking about some failures, some interesting learning points, as well as what makes a great, as well as how to, network in a way that feels good for you, that's real. This is being recorded for the Stand Out Get Noticed podcast. So if you are into podcasts, make sure you go and subscribe. Jason, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on the show.
It's been a long time coming, I think, and we finally got here.
Yes. Yeah. Now, you are the founder of the No BS conference, where I know the focus for you, for the speakers, is to share real stories. Mm-hmm. And I personally, as a business owner, know how important it is to hear real stories from successful people that make it relevant to what I'm going through. Because as you know, we have all these ups and downs along the way. Mm-hmm. Now, you're the director of a very successful digital agency. Mm-hmm. How long have you been doing that for?
Well, I'm probably in my 15th year. So
15th year.
Bring out the internet when it first started. I started back in those days. So I think I graduated in around 2003 or 2002. Freelance for a while, worked at a number of little agencies, and then just decided to do it alone.
So how long after you graduated did you decide, I'm going to start my own business?
It kind of evolved, as I said, like freelancing, building up a bit of a reputation, good portfolio, knowing a lot of business people and business owners, and it just snowballed from there. So I quickly found myself not having time for another job, and I was just solely working on my own projects. So from that point on, I kind of decided to give it a crack, and I was young at the time, young and naive and all the rest of it, but gave it a crack, and here I am in 2020. Talking to you now on a podcast.
Awesome, and we're done. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
All right. Like we're going to go into
there's a lot of other stuff.
A lot of stuff that happens along the way. Yeah. I'm curious. So, what were you doing at the start? What was your area of specialty?
So, I'm a creative by trade. So traditional graphic design, media. So the tangible type of media. Your rock posters and business cards and all that sort of fun stuff. And then brand identity, and obviously with the evolution of the internet and online stuff, moved into the online world. So became a pretty exclusive sort of web designer back then. Taught myself how to code, which there were no courses for at the time. Mm. So really old school, and started in that manner, and slowly built up the agency I have today. So we're I think 12 strong today, but it took me a long time, a lot of hard yards, a lot of earning very little money for a long period of time, but we finally got there, and I'm here today.
Tell me about those early days. What was it like getting started?
It's very, very tough, to be honest. I mean, as I mentioned, my portfolio grew, and I started gaining more and more clients, but just in those first days, I thought it was a really important thing to find an office space, so not sit in my bedroom or garage and start a business, because that's just not gonna motivate you to do too much. Sit around in your underwear all day or not have a shower. So from early days, even when I couldn't really afford it, I got my first office. Bought my first computer. Didn't have much as far as savings or whatever were concerned, but sat myself in an office and started trying to go out, win some business, network a bit, as we'll touch on a bit later. But and built it up that way.
How were you at creating clients back at the beginning?
Look, I can talk and relate to a lot of different people. So I find that I can relate to people fairly easily, and not really do a hard sell. Just be natural, be honest, very black and white, and go that way. So I've never. I'd rather forego working for somebody than do something that I'm not comfortable with, or I'm not comfortable with the person. So even now, our mantra at the agency is like, we do good work for good people. If you're none of those things, then we'd rather not do work.
So you had that mindset even at the very beginning?
Pretty much. Even when you're desperate for work, I'd rather not work than work for somebody I don't like, or just for the dollar. So money is not really the motivating factor for me at all. It's obviously success and success in the business and growing the business, but not necessarily with that financial carrot at the end. It's really trying to be successful at what we do and what I'm doing. And doing it that way.
Yeah, sure. And you hear the stat that most businesses that fail don't make it past their
first couple of years.
First couple of years, yeah. How are things for you after? I guess what were the biggest things you learned in those first critical few years?
I was very lucky that I was living at home with mum and dad at the time, and being a good Greek boy, they're not going to kick me out of home too early. So, that was probably the most fortunate bit, because I could really just try and focus on the business without having to worry too much about how I was, eating or where I was sleeping. So I could focus on that, and like I said, earn very little initially. Probably not doing the right things or charging like I should, or doing way too much work. But just trying to do all those hard yards initially to build up that clientele, that reputation. It took a good 3-4 years to sort of get to that point, and it came about maybe 2007 or 2008. I finally bit the bullet and employed my first staff member, which again I didn't think I could afford, but threw myself in that sort of deep end and put that pressure on myself to basically say, look, I've got to earn more money, I've got to bring in more sales and get this work done, because there's only so much you can do on your own, or even working with contractors. It's a really tricky space too, because if you've got freelancers or contractors working for you, you're at their sort of mercy. They'll break deadlines, they'll decide to go on a fishing trip or something like that and leave you in the lurch. And there's something to be said for having a team in-house, or at least your own full-time members to get the work done for you. So I did that. And
so how many years in was that when you hired your first full-timer?
Probably 5 or 6 years.
5 years in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the mindset struggle that you had at the time when it came to that? Because I know, I've hired a full-time assistant, and that was a very big decision for me, because there's that fear of, will I have enough money coming in to
100%.
support this person? What was going on for you?
Yeah, so very similar. I didn't think I could afford it. I didn't think I could do it. What happens if I can't pay these guys? Obviously, being self-employed and doing it quite hard. Willing not to really pay myself or take any money home, and just to keep the staff members there. But it was the best thing I did. I could bring in more work, we could turn over more work, and within 6 months I had my second staff member. So
Wow.
we're a team of 3 pretty quickly. Got to around 4 or 5 of us within a couple of years, and now we're at 12. So
yeah,
trying to keep it around that mark. It's a nice balance. I think it's a nice number, and manageable.
That's a big team.
Yeah, it's decent. It's decent.
Like I've heard that, finding good people is one of the hardest things, and retaining them as well.
That'd be the hardest thing in this industry, to be honest.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of issues. Staff probably being some of them, or the main ones. Like I said, one staff member decides to leaves a really big hole in a small business. So replacing those guys is very hard. Well, you can replace them, but you'll just keep turning them over until you find the right one. So we've been in positions before where we know the person's not quite right, but we've almost just conceded that it's better to have somebody at half capacity than go through the rigmarole of finding another person.
Oh, right.
Well, it's a 6-month process, really. You get somebody in, interview them, train them up. There's 3-4 months gone right there, and you can quickly find out that they're not the right person. But to then go and have to do that again, you've got deadlines, work coming in. It's very tricky. So that's probably been one of the toughest things, finding the right people and then holding on to them. We were lucky initially in the first few years. Had a bit of a couple of tricky years there, with a few people obviously growing, and they're trying to further their careers and what have you. And being a small business owner, there's not necessarily a senior lead director or developer director or something like that for them to go to. So
they're looking to advance
Correct.
and move up, sort of
Yeah.
in a more corporate hierarchical structure.
Correct. And it's very hard in a small business. I mean, I'm the creative director, so
No one's going to take your spot.
who's going to take my job? So so it's been okay now, where things are going great. We've got a great team, and everyone is on board with our beliefs and what we're trying to achieve. So it's good.
So how many years in were you before you moved out of mum and dad's?
I was probably just around when my second staff member started.
Okay, so about 5 years in.
Yeah, so 2008, 2009.
Yeah. Look, I think it's important to note this because, you know, at the very beginning, the financials are the most stressful thing.
Well, I was newly engaged, trying to save for a house, all that sort of stuff. So, as I mentioned, you know, living with mum and dad was great in that regard. That, you know, it allowed me to do that. Wasn't earning a lot of money at the time, and it allowed me to save and sort of progress the business as well as save for a place and move out and get married and do all those things. Yeah.
I remember when I started my business, I house sat for like 9 months.
Yeah.
I was at different places though, so I was moving around. I was 6 weeks here, 3 weeks there. Oh, someone's going to Europe for 6 weeks and needs someone to take over their place for, you know, half rent or something. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. And I did that for about 9 months and that worked really well for me and saved heaps of money while I wasn't earning very much.
Sorry.
But because I know that sometimes when you do have that safety net, for example, like staying with mum and dad, was there that the temptation to maybe stay a little bit longer and continue to save more? Or were you really no, I want to get out?
I had done my dash by then. I think it's, you know, poor guys, I need to give them a break as well. So, no, it was definitely the best thing that I did and that we did. But it was the right time. So, I was fortunate in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I had friends who were trying to do similar things to me, but physically, financially couldn't do it, or, you know, their parents lived elsewhere, or they had to move out of home for some particular reason. And you're starting from zero and from scratch is very hard if you've got to try and maintain a life without any financial support or help. So I often say that to people that either work for us or I speak to. Great having aspirations to work for yourself, but if you already come from a professional background, you're used to a certain lifestyle, you're earning your $100,000 a year or whatever you're doing, to be prepared to earn zero. I don't think there's many people that can do that, because everyone is used to a certain lifestyle, and when that's sort of stripped or taken away from you, it's something very difficult to do.
100%. Agreed.
So either buy into a business, an existing business, or I'd shy away from possibly doing it on your own, unless you've got a good partner.
Yes, absolutely. And I must say, because I'm 5 years now into business, and I'm used to not having that steady income, because with when you're on your own business, sometimes you have a massive month, sometimes you have a very low month, sometimes it's average, but you don't have that consistency of the paycheck. Like, you don't know, I'm getting this much per month, and that is still, I find, difficult to deal with. I used to let my happiness follow my bank balance. So if I had a good month, I'd be really happy. If I had a bad month, I'd get really depressed. And my business coach told me, she was like, you can't allow that to happen.
Yeah, one thing I did from very young, pretty much from when I first started, was just giving myself a weekly salary wage. As minimal as it was, but just giving myself that discipline. So no matter if I had a great week and, you know, 10 grand came in the door, I wouldn't take the 10 grand home. I'd just still pay myself that real minimum low wage and just keep that money in the business, and it'll allow me to do things or expand, or, you know. So I had that discipline from very young.
Where do you get that from?
Probably my dad, to be honest. Yeah.
What's he like?
Oh, he's, they call me, he's junior. So we're very much the same. But as far as finance and managing money and all that sort of stuff's concerned, I'm actually really interested in economics and all that sort of stuff. So I take an interest in that and try and do things within my means, and try not to live out of your means. I mean, that's another key thing that people can do very easily. Especially
when you're used to, like you said, living a certain way.
Yeah.
I think if you heard that, by the way, there were some dogs in the meeting room next to us.
It's a big dog too.
At my co-work space here, there's a few little dogs running around. So let's shift gears for a bit, Jason. Something that you're doing that I find quite remarkable is that you founded a conference.
Yeah.
Now, I threw a festival last year for my wedding, and that was a very small event compared to what you're doing, and even that blew my mind with how much work was involved. So I'm very impressed that you've gone ahead and started your own conference, and it's called No BS.
Yes.
Can you explain the idea behind the conference and how it came about?
So for me, being obviously wearing many hats, being a creative, but also being a business owner, salesperson, what have you, I would attend a lot of conferences, spend a lot of money, travel the world, and I'd often sit there for 2 days, and at the end of it walk out and say, what the hell was I doing here? Why did I attend? You'd maybe take one talk out of 30, or take something out of that. So I found that these events or these conferences, the content just wasn't there for me. If I was just a designer at another agency and didn't have any other worries in the world, or have to worry about the money coming in, or creating a product and how do we market it, or how do we do these types of things, then that'd be great. You'd get some practical learnings. But for somebody who wears so many different hats, it's very hard to find that content and motivation and inspiration, I suppose, even validation for this crazy sort of journey that we're on, because it takes a lot to stick at this game for a long time, or even in business in general, but stick at it without wanting to bang your head against the wall and wonder, is everyone else feeling the same as what I am? And quite honestly, that most of them are. So I've had No BS in my brain for probably 2 years.
Yeah.
No BS is no bullshit. That's what it stands for. And it's just really about giving real world, real life learnings, journeys, experiences, not so much the practical sort of techniques, but just giving a real honest view and account to the punters, I suppose, and what they're doing and what we can do to be better.
Can you give me an example of something that you were struggling with, especially maybe in the more recent, in the more recent years, when even though you're really established, there's still stuff that always goes on for us as business owners. What is something that you wish you would, you could learn about or see other successful people sharing?
I think we love hearing about startups and all these, success stories. The reality is that companies like Google and what have you have been around for 30 years. Nobody knows that. We see products being launched, big teams behind them, big budgets. But how do they get their money? How do they fund it? How do you market this thing? How do you manage your team? How do you grow your team? So all these sort of pains and growing pains that a company has, I suppose, is what I wanted to know. Or when things are going bad, cash flow's tough and all that sort of stuff. That's all what you find out very quickly in business and working for yourself, but you don't hear necessarily from your peers or people you kind of look up to and aspire to.
Why do people not share that, do you think?
Probably scared. Don't want to look like they're struggling or failing or I think that's what it is.
I think people are very afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, I'm struggling. And especially if you're, because people want to work with a company that is doing well. Like
Correct.
if you hear that a company's not doing well, you're like, oh, well, clearly they're not very good as a company. That's that's what comes out, right? Or if you're, say, a business coach, it's like you can't tell people that you're struggling because you're supposed to be helping people with
That's right.
with their businesses, and all of that. I read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the Nike founder, and I was amazed because you think, Nike, this huge, successful company, one of the most successful ever. And for the first 10 years of Nike, before it was even Nike, but for the first 10 years, he was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yep.
Like